Welcome to my introduction to data mining. I'm Bruce Matsunaga. I created this video to give my online students a very brief primer to get students familiar with the general concept before they dive into data and text mining. I'll start with a couple of quotes. As long as there have been books, there have been more books than you could read. In the life of a professional or scholar, reading in the strong sense of close reading almost certainly takes a backseat to finding out what is in a book without actually reading all or any of it. Knowing how to not read is just as important as knowing how to read. Data mining and machine learning are best understood in terms of provocation, the potential for outlier results to surprise a reader into attending to some aspect of the text not previously deemed significant, as well as not reading or distant reading, the automated search for patterns across a much wider corpus than could be read and assimilated via traditional humanistic methods of close reading. We do an early form of data mining, information retrieval, all the time. When we use Google, we use keywords or phrases, and then use the metadata that Google provides to decide what to read. We use clustering, or finding similar types of text, all the time. We use filters to do this as well. We also use machine sorting of similar texts based on keywords or metadata. Visualizations can often aid us in making sense of information. Take Jon Snow, not that Jon Snow, the other Jon Snow, his cholera map. Snow mapped out the known cholera deaths by hand in the Soho district, which showed a spatial clustering around the Broad Street water pump. The visualization made it easier to determine the cause of the outbreak. Snow examined the water under a microscope and found particulate matter, but it wasn't enough to prove danger since the prevailing view at the time was that cholera was airborne. But he was able to get authorities to remove the pump handle, halting the outbreak. Of note, there was a significant anomaly Snow found in his map. The workers at the Broad Street Brewery never suffered cholera. It was later discovered that the workers all had used their daily allowance of beer, which of course was boiled and sanitized during the brewing process. Similarly, you can read statistics about coastal erosion, but often seeing the numbers represented on a map makes a larger impression. So here's the area in 1922. And then we can see the erosion that's already taken place by 2014. This losing ground also lets you look at what could be potential losses in the uncertain future. Notice how this visualization does a good job of telling a story both in its actual visualization and in the accompanying text. So how can you use data mining and visualizations as an English major? I'll show you some possibilities with two low-entry tools that anyone can use to experiment. In these cases, we are only looking at two factors, word frequency and the date with Ngrams, and word frequency and the position in the text and adjacent words with Voyant. Data retrieval aside, if we look at Google's Ngram viewer, for example, one thing that you have to mind when using Ngrams is the usage and context of the words. Fellow romanicist Angela Esterhammer used Ngrams for a couple of papers, For instance, in her keynote for the International Conference on Romanticism, she used an Ngram to illustrate how the word frequency of speculation increased after the word took on new connotations.
But while Victorian fiction tends toward negative depictions of speculators and improvisers, during the volatile 1820s, both these terms are more complex and multivalent, and both are growing increasingly more common. According to Google's Ngram viewer, that quantitatively graphs word usage, speculation made significant gains in frequency beginning in the second half of the 18th century, to peak in 1835 and again in 1855. This increase in frequency coincides with the new meaning speculation acquires at the end of the 18th century when it comes to denote, quote, a commercial venture involving considerable financial risk on the chance of unusual profit.
The focus of her talk isn't on the Ngram. The tech was just one additional tool in her critical arsenal. The distant reading approach invites and requires closer analysis for any meaningful conclusion. Let's look at Voyant Tools. With some texts, the words you don't see in the visualizations are as important as what you do see. Take the cirrus or the word cloud view of the 1818 version of Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. Man, father, time all stand out, but where is Frankenstein or Victor? Does this provide clues about the structure of the novel and its point of view? Looking at the links tool, we see words that are adjacent to the more frequently used words in blue. If we click on man, the Trends tool updates to show just man. But what is happening in the middle of the book in segment 5? To find out, I'll go to the Context tool down at the bottom, which doesn't update necessarily to show the position clicked, although it does in the reader, which is over here. By scrolling down and clicking on the line, I can view how the word is being used in this section. I can see that the section is where the creature tells his story about his education through his proximity to the DeLacy family. The phrase old man is used repeatedly to refer to the senior DeLacy. Remember that you can manually type in or select from the terms list a word that doesn't appear by default. This is particularly useful if you want to look up and put in the names of the characters and see what sorts of links are adjacent to them, how they are connected. And you can move these all around. If during your reading a particular word or nickname, perhaps of a character, stood out to you, you can always type it in and take a look at what might be going on with that word. What are the words that are adjacent to it? So take some time to play around with the text or corpus, and don't forget that you can just refresh your browser to reset all the tools. These data and text mining tools simply augment the limited time that you have to engage in research and complement your close reading skills by showing you what not to read or focus on, and possibly, as Kirschbaum calls it, provocation, to recognize what sections of the text you need to focus your attention. Have fun experimenting. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.